Hello, it's Sarah Turner, arborist at Casey Trees. I have a quick review of tree planting best practices. As citizen foresters, you are in the front line of quality control by ensuring that trees are planted correctly and volunteers stay safe and have a great experience. We want every tree we plant to live and to add to the tree canopy goal. Toward that end, your knowledge and expertise is very important to us. We hope you find this review very helpful. We have entrusted you with dangerous tools and new ones too, so let's review. The shovel is the most frequently used tool. You'll use it to excavate your hole. You can place soil spoils on your tarp. It will keep your area tidy. Use the pickaxe to break up heavy clay and compacted soil. When using it, wear safety glasses. The stake driver is used to drive in 6-foot wood stakes, and use the rake to clean up the planting area and make a neat mulch circle. We are empowering you with a tool bag that houses a pair of bolt cutters for cutting wire basket, safety glasses to protect your eyes when using the pickaxe, pruners to remove broken, dead branches and to make any structural pruning cuts, measuring tape to measure your hole width, a knife to cut away burlap, scissors to cut away twine and burlap, and a safety pin to pop 3 holes in the ooze tube. Please return the tool bag to registration. Other accessories include stakes, arbor tie, which is a flexible nylon that stretches and is used to anchor the tree to the stakes. A plastic trunk guard protects the cambium tissue of the trunk from lawnmowers and weed whackers. And the deer guard is another fencing material to protect the tree from deer browsing and rubbing. Lastly, the ooze tube is a 25-gallon slow-release watering bag used to irrigate the trees weekly during the growing season. We plant close to 2,000 trees a year that are a mix of several stocks you should be familiar with. About 80% of our community tree plantings are B&B, or balled and burlap stock. Watch out, these can be monster trees with the root balls weighing between 300 and 500 pounds. These trees have lost a lot of their root mass and need critical care in terms of watering for the first 3 years to become established. We plant a fair amount of fruit trees, and these usually come in containers. For containerized stock, something to be looking out for are circling roots. Use the knife in the tool bag to shave off these circling roots and reduce that defect that can reduce the vigor of the tree down the road. We occasionally plant root bag stock. This stock is meant to simulate a container, but reduce the effect of circling roots. We do plant a few bare root trees. The specific steps to plant a bare root tree are not covered in this presentation. Though there are some small nuances between these 3 different stock above, you can follow the next steps to successfully plant a tree with your team. Step 1. Set up your workspace. Spread out a tarp to collect soil spoils while you excavate. And go ahead and get to know your tree. What are you planting? Spend some time maybe telling your team about the species. You can cut the twine off the tree and inspect for any dead or broken branches. Remove those. Assess if there are any codominant stems or rubbing branches to remove. A good word of wisdom is to make 3 good cuts. If you could only make 3, what would they be to reduce any defects and improve the structure? Now is a good time to do this, as smaller cuts leave smaller wounds and seal faster. A few tips. Put your tarp next to where you're digging. Not too far, but not too close. If you're on a slope, try placing it on the high side of your hole so you can shovel or rake soil down into the hole versus up. And orient your strongest shovelers on the far side of the tarp. Step 2. Find the root flare. Sometimes the root flare is referred to as the first order root or as the structural roots. The important thing is that when planted, the root flare should be basically at grade with the undisturbed soil. Open up a small section of burlap to find where the structural roots sit in the root ball. You may need to poke around with your fingers or use the dull end of your knife to pull soil away gently. When you know where the root flare sits in your root ball, you can use that measurement to determine your hole depth. This is very important. Do not plant too deep. Step 3. Preparing the hole is what you will spend most of your time doing. The old adage is to dig a $100 hole to plant a $10 tree, meaning the time you put into preparing the hole will greatly influence the tree's ability to establish. Start by removing turf. You can set aside large clumps and use a shovel to break them up and retain as much of the soil particles as possible to return to your backfill. Your hole width should be 2 to 3 times as wide as the root ball. This width allows the roots to rapidly establish and regenerate into the soil. Do not underestimate the positive effect this step has on tree establishment in tough, heavy clay soils. Remember, the hole depth should be no deeper than your root ball or container. You should know how to adjust your hole depth depending on where the root flare sits. Any large rocks or debris should be set aside for pickup. Step 4. Put the tree in the hole and straighten it up. Work with your team to guide the tree into the hole. You will carefully roll the B&B tree into place. Then center the tree in your hole by using the ropes and twine to rotate and turn your tree if necessary. For example, maybe there's a side of the tree that faces the walkway best. Try not to move the tree by grabbing the trunk. Check from all sides that the tree is straight. To keep the tree straight while supporting itself, you will need to stabilize it with some backfill. Don't backfill too much yet. Check that the root flare is at grade. If the hole was inadvertently dug too deep, add soil to the bottom of the hole and compact it with your foot so there is no settling. Step 5. After your tree is straight and supporting itself, remove the wire basket and burlap. It is best for the tree to remove as much material as possible. After doing this, check again that the tree is straight. We recycle the wire basket material. Please set it aside. Step 6. Place the soil back in the hole in stages. There may be amendment to mix into the backfill. Mix it in thoroughly. Every few inches, very lightly tamp the soil down with your feet or settle the soil with water. Do not place soil on top of the root ball or the container or the root bag. You can create a small berm with soil around the tree. The berm should be low, only 4 to 5 inches, and should be at least 3 feet away from the trunk. This is where you can turn over large pieces of turf to create your berm. Remember to keep it low. If there's a lot of soil remaining after filling the hole, it can be hauled away. Sometimes root flares are buried in the nursery. The best practice is to use the dull end of your knife to carefully break away the soil around the trunk. If you have done a good job, the tree's root flare is at grade, though you should be worried about planting too deep. Also be cautious of planting too high. Planting too high can cause the root ball to dry out and the roots to desiccate. Step 7. Staking is not always necessary. We usually stake trees at parks and schools to offer them some protection. Take into consideration where to place stakes and check what your neighboring team is doing. Stakes should be set at least 3 feet from the trunk and not set into the root ball. Stakes should be placed perpendicular to the slope. You will tie 2 separate bowline knots with arbor tie around the tree and use a half-hitch knot to connect the ends to the stake. Step 8. Mulching. You should create a 6-foot diameter ring around the tree, 2 inches thick. The mulch should not touch the trunk. The mulch breaks down and becomes organic matter that enhances the soil structure. It also helps suppress weeds and keeps the root ball moist. Mulch too thick can limit the amount of water that gets to the root ball, so do not over-mulch. Step 9. Install an ooze tube around the tree. It holds 25 gallons and will slowly let water drip out to irrigate the tree. The ooze tube is anchored to the ground with a wood stake. The stake should be set at least a foot from the trunk. Use a safety pin to punch 3 small holes into the bottom of the bag. Don't use a nail to punch a hole. We also don't use the plastic emitters. You can throw those away. Step 10. Clean up and have lunch. Tree planting is hard work, but very rewarding. We really appreciate your time. If you ever have questions or are unsure, just ask a staff member. Thanks again for taking time to review these best practices. We are so honored to have your time and energy supporting our work.